What if a single royal rule had the power to reshape the future of Spain's royal family forever? What if the traditions that have guided the monarchy for generations suddenly stood in the way of Princess Leonor's personal happiness? While this story is inspired by real public figures, the events and conversations you are about to hear are entirely fictional and created for entertainment. Let's begin. The halls of the Royal Palace of Madrid had always echoed with history. Every portrait, every marble staircase, every carefully guarded room reminded those who lived there that the crown was bigger than any individual. Princess Leonor had grown up understanding this better than anyone. From childhood, she had been taught that duty would always come before desire. But as Leonor matured into the future Queen of Spain, whispers began spreading through palace corridors. Advisors were discussing an ancient royal rule, one that had rarely been mentioned publicly for decades. It wasn't about ceremonies or speeches. It wasn't about military training or state visits. It was about family. The rule had existed for generations, quietly influencing the lives of heirs to the throne. It dictated how the future monarch's immediate family should balance private life with public responsibility. Few outside the palace even knew it existed, but inside the royal household, everyone understood its importance. One rainy evening, King Felipe sat alone in his study, reviewing old constitutional documents and historical records. His expression was unusually serious. Queen Letizia entered quietly, noticing the stack of papers spread across the desk. "You've been looking at those for hours," she said gently. Felipe sighed. "History has a way of returning when we least expect it." Letizia looked at one particular document resting near the top. "Is it about Leonor?" Felipe nodded slowly. "The decisions we make today could shape not just her reign, but her future family." Neither of them spoke for several moments. Outside, rain tapped softly against the palace windows. The silence felt heavier than words. Days later, Leonor returned from official duties. She had spent weeks attending military responsibilities, diplomatic meetings, and public ceremonies. Although cameras captured every smile, only those closest to her noticed the exhaustion hidden behind her calm expression. She found her father waiting in one of the palace gardens. The gardens had always been their favorite place for private conversations. "Walk with me," Felipe said. They strolled slowly beneath centuries-old trees. Finally, Felipe spoke. "There are traditions every monarch inherits." Leonor smiled faintly. "I've been hearing that sentence my entire life. This one is different." She looked at him carefully. "What do you mean?" Felipe hesitated. "There may come a day when you'll have to choose how much of your family's future belongs to tradition, and how much belongs to you." Leonor remained silent. She had expected conversations about diplomacy, about leadership, about constitutional responsibilities. Not this. Over the following weeks, palace advisors quietly organized confidential meetings. Historians, constitutional experts, senior royal staff, each brought different opinions. Some insisted ancient traditions should remain untouched. Others believed modern Spain expected a monarchy capable of evolving. One advisor summarized the situation plainly. "History respects those who preserve tradition." Another immediately responded, "But the future belongs to those willing to adapt." The room fell silent. Even among experienced officials, no easy answer existed. Meanwhile, the Spanish public knew nothing about these private discussions. They simply watched Princess Leonor continue fulfilling every royal duty with grace. She visited schools, military academies, charitable organizations, cultural events. Every appearance strengthened public confidence. Yet behind every public smile, questions lingered. Could one royal rule truly affect the future of an entire family? Late one evening, Leonor visited the palace library. Rows of leather-bound books filled the enormous room. She searched through biographies of European monarchs. She discovered story after story of kings and queens forced to balance personal happiness against public expectation. Some had sacrificed love, others had sacrificed family life. A few had found ways to protect both. She quietly whispered to herself, "There has to be another way." Unknown to her, Queen Letizia had entered quietly. "I asked myself that same question years ago," Letizia said softly. Leonor turned. "You did." Her mother smiled warmly. "Every generation believes they're facing impossible choices. So how do you know what's right?" "You don't." Leonor looked surprised. "You simply choose the path you can live with." Those words stayed with Leonor for days. Soon afterward, another confidential meeting was held. This time Leonor attended. Senior advisors presented several possible interpretations of the old rule. Some versions required strict public roles for future royal children. Others suggested greater personal freedom while maintaining constitutional responsibility. None were simple. One advisor finally asked Leonor directly, "Your Royal Highness, what kind of monarchy do you hope to build?" The room became perfectly still. Leonor answered without reading prepared notes. "I hope to build one that earns respect not through fear of change, but through service." Several advisors exchanged thoughtful glances. The discussion continued long into the evening. King Felipe watched quietly. He recognized something important. His daughter was no longer preparing to become queen someday. She was already thinking like one. Weeks later, international media began speculating about changes inside European monarchies. Every royal household was adapting to modern society in different ways. Some reduced official duties, others simplified traditions. Observers wondered whether Spain might eventually follow its own unique path. Inside the palace, however, no final decision had been reached. One afternoon, Felipe invited Leonor onto a palace balcony overlooking Madrid. The city stretched endlessly below. Families walked through parks. Children played in nearby squares. Life continued beyond palace walls. Felipe broke the silence. "When I became king, I thought protecting tradition meant never changing it." Leonor listened carefully. "I've learned something different." "What?" "Sometimes protecting tradition means allowing it to survive by evolving." Leonor smiled. "I think Spain already understands that." Felipe smiled back. "So do I." For the first time in weeks, the tension between them seemed lighter. Months passed. Public duties continued. State visits, military ceremonies, national celebrations. The palace never confirmed the rumors surrounding the mysterious royal rule. Instead, they quietly focused on service. Gradually, public conversations shifted away from speculation. People admired Leonor's professionalism, her confidence, her growing leadership. One evening, Queen Letizia joined Felipe in the palace gardens. "Do you think she'll be ready?" Felipe looked toward the palace lights. "I think she's already becoming exactly the queen Spain needs." "And the rule?" Felipe smiled gently. "Rules matter." He paused. "But character matters more." The breeze carried the scent of blooming flowers across the gardens. Inside the palace, history continued writing its next chapter. Not through dramatic announcements, not through headlines, but through everyday choices. Years from now, historians might debate whether a single royal rule truly changed the future of Princess Leonor's family. Perhaps some would argue it preserved tradition. Others would claim it opened the door to a modern monarchy. But those who knew the real story would remember something else entirely. The future was never decided by rules alone. It was shaped by courage, by wisdom, by compassion, and by a young princess determined to honor her country without losing sight of the people she loved most. Whether ancient traditions ultimately remained unchanged or quietly evolved, one truth became impossible to ignore. The strength of any royal family has never depended solely on centuries-old rules. It has always depended on the people willing to carry them forward with integrity. And as Princess Leonor looked toward the future awaiting her, she understood that every generation inherits history, but every generation also has the opportunity to write a new chapter. Perhaps that would become her greatest legacy of all. Disclaimer: this story is entirely fictional and inspired by public figures. The events, conversations, and situations depicted are imaginary and created solely for entertainment